In the first of a three-part series, Albuquerque Museum Curator of Art Andrew Connors asks, what is the real New Mexico?
The more stories that we get to experience in our lives, the more rich our understanding of the world becomes. And each artist tells us a different story using their own vocabulary, using their own sense of aesthetics, using their own sense of priorities. When we look at different landscapes created by different artists, we can learn a great deal, not just about New Mexican landscape, but more so about the personality of the artists themselves. So artists don't just depict straightforwardly what they see. Artists filter what they see very complexly. This becomes very complicated when we want to know what the real New Mexico is all about, because there isn't one real New Mexico. There are thousands, there are millions of real New Mexicos. Each of us build our New Mexico based on the common ground of the state, of the reality of this place, filtered through our view of the world around us. One of the first galleries in the exhibition asks the question, real New Mexicans? Who are real New Mexicans? Individuals can be portrayed in so many different ways, and when you have different artists looking at the same culture, each artist will respond in their own way. For instance, Edward Gonzalez has created a spectacular portrait of Patrocinio Varela, the great wood carver from Taos. Gonzalez's portrait shows the nobility, the strength, the wisdom, the thoughtfulness of an artist who was one of the first New Mexicans ever to be shown in museums in New York City. And Edward Gonzalez says, we need to know this man. And so he created this heroic portrait of him. There's a portrait of Julian Duran, a young shepherd from Taos, and he was painted by Buck Dunton in 1926. Julian Duran probably listened to the radio and probably drove around in a car every once in a while, but Buck Dunton decided to portray him as a goat herd, as a shepherd in the spectacular landscapes of New Mexico. It is a romanticized painting, and it's a painting that basically does not celebrate Julian Duran's modernity, it celebrates the past. It celebrates his fitting into an ancestry of generations. So many of the portraits of New Mexicans were aimed for an outside audience, to show people not from New Mexico what New Mexicans look like. We have a couple of astoundingly important examples of portraits that are representative of Hispanic New Mexicans for Hispanic New Mexicans. And those works of art really tell complex stories and important stories of modernity, of modernism, and contemporary life. One individual here in Albuquerque, Juan Jose Baca, said, I want to be photographed. I want to be portrayed in the most modern medium possible. In the 1880s, there wasn't the technology in New Mexico to create a photographic portrait on this scale, and so Mrs. Albright made a drawing in charcoal that looked like a photograph. And the same was true in 1906 when the Armijos commissioned a portrait from an itinerant painter that shows them as up-to-date and as modern as any couple in Philadelphia and Boston and New York, in Charleston. And as Hispanics, they were leading Albuquerque, and therefore New Mexico, into the future. They were not looking back to their past and on their heritage. In this exhibition, we see a broad range of ways that artists found the voice that they needed to tell the story that they wanted to tell. In artist self-portraits, we get one of the wonderful opportunities where artists don't have to worry about flattering other individuals. So they explore a variety of different techniques. Raymond Johnson explored a technique called pointillism. And then we bring that up to the present and see Fritz Scholder being incredibly expressive with his brushstroke. Sheldon Harvey, a Navajo painter, created a self-portrait that just rips your heart out because he's looking at himself through the guise of the stereotype. What does he have to do to make himself look Indian? Many artists came to New Mexico because they had heard of this spectacular physical landscape. But what's interesting is how many artists interpreted other things as well as the stereotypical landscape. Raymond Johnson came to New Mexico a few years before even Georgia O'Keeffe arrived and looked at the landscape and was inspired to paint the landscape in very unusual ways. This spectacular way that he presented Carlsbad Caverns is so theatrical. Sometimes contemporary artists are very much moved by the entropy of the loss of the change of culture and heritage through time. Tim Prithroe created a model of Starkey's Trading Post. It was the American dream. It was this man's ideal to create a trading post and raise his family and create a good income for himself. But when Route 66 was passed over in favor of the interstate, Starkey's Trading Post and multiple other businesses, thousands of other businesses throughout the West, lost their vitality. And Starkey's Trading Post shows the loss of the American dream on behalf of this one family. So what is the real New Mexico? If we're willing to enter into a new world of each artist, we really shed a lot of our preconceived notions. We shed a lot of our expectations for what the truth is, and we may be open to new truths and to new stories and to new ways of seeing things. The more broad our vantage point can be, told through hundreds of different artistic voices, the more we are going to come close to understanding this place that we call the common ground of New Mexico.
Watch Colores next week as this series explores cultural appropriation and how new voices have emerged.